welcome to Appointed Counsel, a podcast presented by Tennessee Court Talk for those involved in indigent representation. I'm Joe Byrd, lead attorney for the Indigent Services Team of the Tennessee Administrative Office of the Courts. Episode 3, Tips on Getting Paid Faster. I'm here today with Jada Herndon. Jada is one of our senior auditors here at the AOC. And Jada, it's good to have you here in our podcast today.
Thank you, Joe.
So Jada, just tell those who might be listening how long you've been here and what you do. Just give us a little description.
So I've been here at the AOC for about 10 and a half years. I am a second review auditor. I do the second review process after first review and send claims over to F&A for payment.
And Jada's sort of my right-hand person getting a lot done. She has another partner, Wyatt, who works and helps and a lot of the things doing second reviews. But Jada really may be one of the people you talk to if you're a claimant on occasion. So I am occasionally asked by attorneys and sometimes their assistants when they put the claims in, what can we do to get our claims paid faster? I think the number one key thing is don't get your claim returned, right? I mean, that slows it down, doesn't it? It slows it down by, what, you think, days, weeks?
Yeah, sometimes a couple of weeks.
Right, because I know sometimes if I'm reviewing a complex and extended claim, I don't always get to look at my queue every day. And so it might be several days that it sits in my queue and then I return it, goes back to the judge. So the key is don't have a return. You might not remember, you're too young, Jada, but I remember staying up late watching David Letterman. He had his top 10 list. And so I asked the other auditors, the rest of our team, to give me what are the top 5 reasons that they return claims for. And then I compiled a top 10 list. We're probably not going to be as funny as David Letterman will be. In fact, not funny at all, probably. But before we get to the top 10 list, one of the things that I think is a key problem is that really slows down more than normal if there is where supplier ID information is not updated correctly. Can you just tell us a little bit what's supplier ID information and what happens when it's not updated and say some mail gets returned or a check gets returned or something? What happens in that process?
So the supplier ID information is basically your supplier ID number that's assigned by the state to your registration, and that is how the state pays you. So if you have an address change, a firm change, or any type of change to your registration, and that's not updated when we send claims over to F&A to be paid, it's going to throw your registration into error and cause an additional delay in you receiving payment until we can get in contact with you and update that information.
And one of the things that hopefully everyone will do is when they do have some of those changes, they'll get that into our special mailbox that we've set up for that. And do you remember what the email address is for that?
It is w9.help@tncourts.gov.
And what we really need them to do is just to redo a new W-9, right?
Correct.
Well, let's get down to our top 10 list that I've compiled in the David Letterman style. Let's take them in reverse order.
All right. Coming in at number 10 is failing to upload a final dispositional order when the claim date is near the 180 days allowed for timely claims.
Yeah, and I know this can cause some confusion for some attorneys. We don't necessarily want a final dispositional order if they're filing the claim close to the final hearing, but we do need it when they push it past close to the 180-day mark because we're trying to determine is the claim timely. So if you get that in on the initial front end, it's helpful. It's not helpful when you just add things onto the claim that aren't necessary, though, right? I mean, we don't really want them to add things that we have to go through and see if they redacted and all that.
Correct. Okay, coming in at number 9, failing to upload required supporting documents such as receipts.
Yeah, and I don't know that because I review mostly complex and extended claims, I don't see many of those things that aren't happening, but I'm guessing as a second reviewer, you do see where we have to return them for receipts and other supporting documents. Is that something you've seen quite a bit of?
I wouldn't say quite a bit, but it is something that does occur from time to time. Number 8, failing to separate in-court hours from out-of-court hours.
This is a real confusing thing because back in the day when I was younger and doing this work on paper claims, filing paper claims with the AOC and taking appointed work, we used to have a different hourly rate for in-court and an hourly rate for out-of-court. That was changed in around 2017, I think. And but now it's all set at $50 an hour, but we still want the attorneys to differentiate their in-court from out-of-court hours because because that's one of the ways that the court tracks some of its reporting and some of those things.
Number 7, block billing, not intense. Our requirement is similar to federal court.
Yeah, this is where an attorney will just put in a 15-minute or 30-minute or 45-minute or even an hour increment, and they just do that but it's tenths of an hour. And I get why some attorneys don't do this. They're used to flat rate billing, and they don't know how to bill for a client to see it, in terms of the work that they do. And we're not different. Like you said in reading it, we're really following what the federal system does mostly and making it the time be within tenths. And then they're supposed to put together anything that's less than a tenth of an hour. They're supposed to be able to aggregate all those activities into that tenth.
Okay, number 6, failing to properly enter mileage, not include in cities to and from.
Sometimes when you're putting mileage in, you just put general mileage. If you don't put what the cities are, where you're going from or to, that doesn't give us enough information to be able to say that was a claim, that's a proper claim.
It's also counties, because some rural counties, they're county to county. Okay, number 5, information missing on orders.
Yeah, this is something that typically this isn't the judge's responsibility because our attorneys are preparing proposed orders. So it's important that the attorneys are careful when they get to the process where they're preparing the proposed order that they include all the information. And I suggest that you have a good template order that you just fill in for all the most important information. One of the things I know that seems like auditors have a hard time is when the case numbers don't match, and then we've got to send it back and then trying to get an amended order or some explanation along those lines.
Number 4, information on children. Dates of birth missing on properties tab and dependency and neglect.
Yeah, this is something where it's confusing to people, right? Because we want the birthdays in ACAP, but then we make them redacted on the order. But it's not us wanting them to redact it on the orders. It's F&A's requirement that it's redacted because that is a public document, so people can see it. But we have to be able to prove to the comptroller that these were actually minors. And so in ACAP, it has to show their birth dates. And it's only in delinquency, dependency delinquency, and termination of parental rights cases.
Yeah, so the only thing I'd add to that is we do have a lot of returns for those, and sometimes attorneys do not know where to put the children. If you'll just click the little plus button beside the parent, it'll populate another line. Some attorneys do put it in the notes, and we don't see that. Number 3, forgetting to check the complex box on a complex or extended claim.
This is one that's near and dear to my heart because I have to review all those complex and extended claims, and I see how many times that they just forget to click the box. And it's an easy thing to forget, right? I mean, it's a little box to click. You do have to make sure that the order is uploaded, the C&E order is uploaded, but you got to click that box or to go, and it'll be processed under the default claim. And then if we can't find, and this is another thing, if we can't find the order uploaded in the orders folder, not in the prior approval. There should never be any reason for an attorney to upload anything in prior approval.
Not in the pre-approval folder, no.
So basically, that's something that we take care of internally. No attorney should have to use that prior approval. All the orders should go in orders. But I do see a lot of them get kicked back. Well, we're getting pretty high. Number 2.
Number 2, incorrect case numbers. Numbers do not match from properties tab, appointment order, complex and extended, final orders.
I've drafted so many orders and motions in my life. I know how easy it is when you make a mistake here or there, but for us, we have to track these documents, and they're associated with cases across all the judicial districts and all the counties. So for us to be able to properly do that, we've got to match them by the docket numbers, the case numbers. And so we're not just being nitpicky. It's really something that if you ever try to find something in reverse out of the 80 to 100,000 orders we process every year, you know how important it is that everything matches up. So if they can just do a double check on all of those docket numbers, those case numbers, and make sure that what's entered on the properties page is correct. And if they do have 2 docket numbers for whatever reason they can enter both case numbers on the properties page, right?
They can. Just click the little plus button and another line will populate. And rightfully coming in at number one, the biggest reason we return claims, failing to redact personal identifying information on all orders uploaded.
Yeah, and we know that sometimes attorneys have said, well, why don't you all do that? And the reason is because we only have 8 auditors and only 4 of them are assigned to mainly attorney clients. So if they were redacting too, we would really be slow. I mean, we couldn't get anything really done in any real length of time that we think that would be acceptable. So we need them. And in fact, I'm surprised. I'm a little more familiar with federal court in this instance that, you've got to redact before you file it with the court. And I know our state courts don't necessarily require that, but it'd be a good habit for attorneys to get into anyway, even in the court system. But again, we have to have that for F&A because it's a public document when we send it over there. Now, there were some other things that the auditors brought to our attention that didn't make our top 10 list. They said, and I give them honorable mention, there was the random outlying dates, the claiming time for communicating with the AOC. I've seen a few times where I've had to send some claims back where judges' signatures are missing from orders. And then we've mentioned already when they upload multiple copies of things, that just makes it slower for everybody, right?
That does, because we really have to take the time to go through and unfile them before we send them to Finance and Administration.
One of the auditors emailed me and said, please tell the attorneys, we want you to get paid, but we've got a job to do. We got to make sure that everything complies with Rule 13. So they just said, please review everything quickly. And I can kind of identify with that. The thing that makes me the happiest is when I'm able to just go right through something and just click approve to move that claim on. We can't promise every time that a claim will be paid within 40 days, from the day that it's filed. But I think if they avoid doing these 10 things and the other issues that we've mentioned, they're not going to get returned, and at least it has a better chance of getting paid faster, don't you think?
I agree. And another thing is to be sure you're checking your return claims tab, because when we do return them, that is where they go. And a lot of attorneys do not check that tab.
Yeah, and that can sometimes we see it set for months that they don't return it back to us, right?
Last week I saw 6 months. I think last month I saw it was a couple of years.
Yeah. So please check your return tabs and we'll get back to you. Jada, thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you.
For more information, check out the Indigent Representation webpage at tncourts.gov.